right. Good evening, Michigan City, Indiana, and thank you all for joining us for another exciting meeting of the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission. That is a special meeting that's called specifically because we have a number of items and activities that are going on in the community that we are trying to stay in front of and aggressively pursue. So we have actually a relatively small agenda this evening of only 8 items, but they're very pertinent. And let me start with the roll call. Deb, if you would put in the minutes that all commissioners are here with the exception of our Commissioner Teresa Edwards from the school board, or school corporation, excuse me. So, and with that, we had an executive committee in front of this. So Mr. Cyranek, any comments?
There was an executive committee meeting before this. No items were discussed that were not permitted by the open door law, and no decisions were made.
Thank you. All right. First significant item on the agenda is double track updates. So, Alan, if you would, this is double track and station block both. So,
the 2 agreements that we have before you that I've given you, one that has modifications that have occurred right up until about 3:30 this afternoon, and that is the contract with Beam, Longus, and Neff. Let's hold that for a second because I have several comments I want to make on that. The first one, though, is the contract with regards to August Mac, and there's some comments that I will make on that as it relates to that. Because this is a project that also involves federal dollars, it's not your straight Indiana-based purchase acquisition and follow relatively simple rules.
This is purchase and acquisition of property in the station block.
Properties in the station block as it relates to the double track project.
Okay.
We all know when it comes to the federal government, if what a normal person can do in 5 minutes, the federal government can make it take 5 hours, and that's kind of what we're up against here.
And cost twice as much.
And what?
And cost twice as much.
And cost 5 times as much, yes. So, part of the Federal Transit Administration and specifically enforcement of the Uniform Relocation Act, federal statutes, with regards to people who are being displaced by a federal project, they are required to follow these 2 regulations, or the regulations of the Uniform Relocation Act. So, part of that process has to do with getting appraisals. Part of that process has to do with doing environmental studies, phase 1 and phase 2. And unlike, again, phase 1s and phase 2s that we typically deal with, the phase 1 and phase 2 for the federal government are more specialized. August Mac qualifies for that, so the proposal you have before you is a not to exceed cost estimate of $59,000, and you saw the 3 different estimates there. We know in the phase 1 activities, the 12.3 and the 6.7, 12,300, 6,700 are known costs. That will happen. As the consistency with any phase 1 that's done is that depending upon the findings of the phase 1 will dictate the need for a phase 2. The phase 2 summaries that are included there have to do with again, not just a simple phase 2 assessment, but a federally minimum requirements for a federal assessment. So that's why the cost of that is so high. So when I say it will not exceed $59,000, it really depends on the number of phase 1, or will depend on the results of phase 1s that dictate the requirement of a phase 2 assessment. And finally, with regards to that, 2 more things with regards to that, just for your information and for the public's information. The phase 1s are basically, you look at the history, the ownership history and the activities of what's occurred on a property, and for example, if there was a service station, if there was a dry cleaner, which we all know, something along those lines, that there's a possibility of putting contaminants in the ground, and that will dictate the need for a phase 2. If it's just purely a residential with no other kinds of potentially hazardous activities occurred there, there would not be a need for a phase 2. So those are 2 different examples given that. Finally, and I say this more to the public in terms of where we are in terms of how we get to this point with August Mac. First of all, August Mac has been our consultant and our service provider for the Trail Creek litigation that we've had, as well as all the studies and all the testing that they have done down there for that litigation, and will be involved with us as we go forward with that. So we have a history, and they were, well, most importantly, or most recently, is that they were involved with the vapor intrusion testing last February for those residential areas down there. So we have a track record with August Mac. We know the quality of their services. It's very good. So I have no trouble recommending them for $59,000. One final point: another environmental group was recommended to us, and they also provided a cost estimate for the same thing as August Mac did. And as I noted to you, I think the cost of that came back at about $135,000. So, and there was no difference. So it's a reasonable cost. Even though it's hard to say $59,000 is a reasonable cost. $59,000 is a reasonable cost for this type of work.
Well, plus, our history with August Mac has allowed us for recovery, right?
Absolutely.
So maybe, can you talk about some money we have recovered relative to 12-3?
Not yet.
Okay.
That's still out there.
In progress. So.
We have, and I think I reported that at the meeting early this month, is we have reached a settlement with Bakley Cleaners for the cleanup, and not necessarily liability, but cleanup of that. We are still putting the final touches on that. August Mac was, you're right, interesting.
But they were critical to our potential success. I
Absolutely, yes. Well, unquestionable success, having been involved in those kind of, and we will hear more about that at our October meeting. Hopefully we'll have everything done for it by then. I think we're pretty close to it. But yeah, it's August Mac's been very helpful to this community. So.
All right, so the recommendation is for us
to approve the proposal for the Phase 1, Phase 2 environmental station for the station block properties, 9 parcels down there, and the amount not to exceed $59,000.
And you might also add that we are under the gun relative to getting control of the properties to support the expansion of the double track.
That's correct. Correct. Because of, again, I mean, and this is anything that we set. One of the other things I guess I could say about the federal government is that when they say jump, you say how high. They say they want this stuff done yesterday. So yes, we are under the gun and trying to get this done quickly and as responsibly as possible.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Cernak? It's a pleasure of the commission.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right.
The second contract that you have is from Beam, Longus, and Neff, LLC Consulting Engineers of Indianapolis. Unlike my comments that I said with regards to August Mac, where I spoke with at least a vague familiarity of what's involved in environmental cleanups, I got to admit, when it comes to the Uniform Relocation Act and the requirements that the federal government is putting on us with regards to having this consulting services, it's Greek to me, I got to admit. And I have spent a considerable amount of time trying to understand this so that I can explain it to you in terms of exactly what you're getting. I'm probably maybe halfway there if I want to be optimistic. But the bottom line is where we get to this contract is that it is written in such a manner that while I think the cost is high, while I do not appreciate the actual tasks that are involved, such as to justify what may be a maximum contract amount of 73 and 175, so roughly $250,000 for their consultation services to appraise properties, negotiate settlements, or negotiate acquisition, and then to assist in the relocation of that. And where they come up with some of these numbers, even after talking with them as recently as this afternoon, I got to admit, I don't know. It kind of floors me. But having said that, as my disclaimer maybe, where I am confident with this agreement is that we will be billed. I probably will spend more time with Debbie every time we get an invoice with this, with any other activity I do during the course of a month as it relates to anything else I do at the Redevelopment Commission, because I have insisted on any invoice that we get with this will show every detailed unit cost for everything they are billing with. So even when we talk to the fact that you'll note that it's kind of vague, at least in my opinion, it's very vague with respect to the consultation services not to exceed $73,000. And then you look at what's involved in consultation services, which are included in Appendix 8, subsections 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3, I look at that and say, no way that can justify $73,000. And I still sit here today and say there's no, and I said that to them earlier this afternoon, there's no way that can justify $73,000. And while we may not reach an agreement on that in terms of my thick skull or my questioning of their motivation, but we will get specific unit costs from our invoicing, and those are the things that I will review with Debbie every month so that you'll know exactly what you're spending with. Now, that's probably about as best we can do to justify the cost as it relates to that. Furthermore,
So could we turn down one of those if we want something different or something like that? What happens if you don't like it?
I'll keep questioning them as to why I don't like it, to the point I'm not going to submit it to you guys for approval until I'm satisfied that I have some kind of an understanding on it. And I will review that process, and like I said, I think I've been annoying enough with them for the past couple of weeks with regards to negotiating this contract. I know that that's not going to change, and I don't see that changing. But my point is the fact that if I can't justify it to you or explain it to you, then it's not going to come before you. So, now as for the Appendix D, as it relates to, and these are all under subsection 2, these are the tasks that are involved with respect that they believe will cost not to exceed $175,700. And again, for example, when you look under relocations, I'll probably share this with you. When you look under relocations, they have 17 displacees. Displacee, and on the Uniform Relocation Act, for example, is the fact that if I'm in one of these areas, and I'm in one of these units, and I'm renting property, and we know it's going to be taken over as part of this federal project for the double track project, under the Uniform Relocation Act, the city has to buy my property at an agreed price based on the appraisals done by these consultants. And then after we've agreed on a sale price, then you have to relocate me to another place. And you have to give me money for that as well. Well, that's fair. I understand that. I get that point. But the question comes down to, if it's just me, that's just one displacee. If it's my wife and 3 children, is that 1 or is that 5? And as recently as this afternoon, I got 2 answers to that. Well, maybe it's 1, maybe it's 5. So I don't know the answers to that. I don't know where they come up with 17. Particularly because only 2 of the parcels have rental property in there. Now, it would also include businesses, so we know the tattoo parlor, for example, is down there. But again, should be just one displacee. I don't understand where they come up with 17, so I can't tell you that. But what I can tell you is that when we get invoiced for relocations, we will get for 3 displacees. I will say, well, who are the 3 displacees? So we'll know who those people are. I can't, for the life of me, figure out who those 17 displacees are, but maybe I'll be surprised. So
the other piece is we need to be fair to these people, so we want a solid process.
Yes.
We'll want to know who is.
And we want to make sure we're doing everything that we are required to do, both under state statute, which is not that rocket science, but under the federal government, which I also don't think is rocket science too, but they make it seem that way. Well, my point to you is the fact that the way I've negotiated this is that, again, you won't pay for anything, you won't approve for anything from BLN that we don't have a specific unit cost associated with it. Okay. And I'll be able to explain that to you for any questions that come up, because if I can't explain it to you, then no, we're not. It's going back to the drawing board, and we'll figure out where it goes from there. So, one final thing under Appendix D, number 3, when it comes down to that additional $22,000, we asked them to write that in. At this point, we own the one property down there on 11th Street, which was the old train station, I think. We purchased that several years ago. And the absurdity of the federal government, they think they may have to negotiate with us this parcel, to acquire this parcel with us, and we have to buy it from ourselves for the purposes of the double track project, and then we have to pay for our displacement costs. I kid you not. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny here. That's exactly where we are with this thing. When you deal with the federal government, So we wrote this up as a base of the 175.7 and the 73. But in the event that the federal government says, yes, we really need to do those very absurd things that I just mentioned, the cost on that is approximately $22,000. So what you are approving tonight is what I'm asking you to approve. Oh, and one more thing, because Don mentioned it before, we are really under the gun on this one. I wish we could have gone out and found other consultants and at least get some kind of comparative, if again, for no other reason, so that I can come to you and say, look, this is a good deal or this is a bad deal. I can't say that to you in all honesty because I have no idea if it's a good deal or a bad deal. I just know this is the only consultant that we have before us, and it's a consultant that was recommended to us by NICD. So, and again, because we don't have the luxury of time to making this decision, this is kind of where we are. So, what I'm asking you tonight is to approve our contract for engineering services with Beam, Longus, and Neff for the purposes of the consultation services for appraising and acquiring and relocating property owners that are on the station block as part of the station block project for a cost not to exceed, if someone can help me out, whatever, 73,000 plus 175.7, and then plus an additional 22,000. So 175, 75, 225, so roughly 200, roughly. Any discussion while I calculate? It is 73,000.
That'd be a good idea to get an exact number.
$270,700, not to exceed that.
That includes the 22?
That includes the 22.
Very good job.
Is that what you said?
Yes, it is.
Our numbers guy, right, yeah.
All right.
Maybe to a business owner, right, yeah, got it. So I note in here too, so under the standard agreement in Appendix E, there is a termination clause. So for whatever reason, thinks they got 30 days to either side.
And again, and those are all fairly typical terms, although you'll note that I did have them strike out the late payments.
Yeah.
Just because, again, of the way we do things and the way the city
Well,
does
plus you want to
things
have time to
with the
review.
process,
so,
yeah, and we just want to make sure we go back. So I knocked out. So they were agreeing with that of knocking out the late payments, and there's not going to be any interest. That was not that difficult to do. But yeah, termination need to be with cause or without cause.
All right, so you start getting some invoices that you think are inappropriate, and you tell us not to pay them, and
Well,
that goes on, and hey, we're done.
You'll never see them.
Yeah.
You won't see them
Okay,
unless
good.
I'm satisfied that I can explain to you what you're getting, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you.
Because Debbie will do that for me.
So your recommendation is we move ahead?
Move ahead with the contract with the not to exceed on that. And like I say, I think I can answer questions on this now.
Any questions? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Motion to approve. Support.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right. On to item number 4. This is addendum to American Structure Point, contract for Trail Creek Bridge. I see Chris Murphy in the audience. And I don't know if you want to, Craig, you want to lead into this a little bit?
Sure. So we currently have a contract with American Structure Point with regard to the design and engineering related to enhancements made to the Trail Creek Bridge, Highway 12 bridge over Trail Creek, adjacent to Blue Chip Casino. Due to the need to consider the potential traffic flow options and designs related to a proposed project that we're in negotiations with adjacent to the bridge, we asked American Structure Point to put together a proposal for us to take a look at alternatives of how to handle the traffic flow necessary for that potential either new intersection or adjusted intersection in that area, given the factors involved in that project. And so there is some timing potentially involved in this as well due to the state in this case. So we have the federal government tonight, and the state, and all sorts of other entities.
Not to also mention the Blue Chip expansion itself.
as well as that, and we want to be careful, to make sure that we're not negatively impacting our, significant partners in the community in the form of blue chip, casino as well. So we've asked them to put together a contract. They put that together not to exceed 34,000. Wouldn't change. I'm looking for my copy. Here we go. It says this as attachment number 1 at the top, page 1 of 1. So not to exceed $34,800 as estimated by American Structure Point. And so just what this will give us is an assessment of current traffic flow, traffic volumes, conversations that need to take place with NDOT directly, which are challenging in and of themselves. Again, complexities involved in the changes that have been made to the roadway in this area recently as well as in the past with some of the narrowing of travel lanes and things like that associated with this area. But bottom line is it's NDOT's jurisdiction, so we need to have conversations with them up front. But as I said, it would be an adjustment to our contract to take that current contract from $70,000 to a total of $104,800, not to exceed $104,800. And with that, I'll have Chris Murphy give some background on this as well.
And just a clarification, it says Central Street, it's
Center Street. Center Street.
Good evening, Commissioners. Chris Murphy with Structure Point. I apologize for that. I completely, I knew that, but I was looking at the scope of work and schedule and missed the inappropriate street name. In addition to the work that Craig prescribed, what we want to end up with at the end of this is some project costs for improvements for several different alternatives of intersection configurations and road improvements that could be considered by NDOT and the community as to what may work best in this location, so that we can move ahead on some knowledge of what the total cost of the project will be as we want to schedule and construct improvements in this area to make the traffic work on that approach. We've identified a work schedule of 45 days from tonight. We've already scheduled our traffic counting operations. They'll be taking place next week.
New traffic count then?
Pardon?
New traffic counts?
Yes, on the approaches to US 12. We do have traffic numbers on US 12 itself from NDOT, but we want to make sure we have reliable numbers on the approaches to the intersections in this area, so that we can best configure turn lane approaches necessary to not only address the current traffic, but also the projected traffic in the future.
So, on your 12 numbers, I should ask these in advance. It's probably a little dangerous for me to ask without talking to you, but I'm assuming that the Route 12 stuff also has seasonal variation in the stuff on 12 that you already have from NDOT?
It does not readily have seasonal information, but you can view that NDOT has traffic counts available on US Highway 12 typically every other year or 18 months or so. So as you go back through that, you can make some adjustments.
Obviously we're continue to be a seasonal community, so.
Correct.
Right. All right, and just, I think there's at least been some communication. We do have some interest in the blank property, if you will. And
the project is sizable enough that it warrants our careful investigation of the traffic flow and intersection enhancements that would need to be made to be able to facilitate the traffic from that development.
so this is to try to keep pace with potential development.
Correct.
And to use your expertise on a project we're already working on. So you already
Correct.
have more knowledge than many. So,
Correct.
so any questions for Mr. Murphy? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Motion to approve.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you very much. All right, so next item. Maybe I'll let Craig start this off. Item number 5, former Memorial Hospital site update. John Doyle and Ruth Worma. And this is our ongoing community interest in the Memorial Hospital site on Pine
Yeah.
between.
Yeah, so let's have John come up and talk to us first to give us an update on some of the site-specific adjustments that we need to make and some of the, just an update on where we're at with kind of finalizing some of the work that we previously approved and some minor adjustments we need to make to contracts and that sort of thing for the work that Doyle and Associates is conducting for us. So I'll just turn it over to John to give us an update on all that and go through those items.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Doyle from John Doyle and Associates. With reference to the project, after our last meeting where I spoke to you with regard to increased costs for concrete work on the project, I wrote a letter to Mr. Woodruff and expressed your resolutions and concerns, and I also had an interim conversation with him a few days later. He indicated that he has been talking to the subcontractor, Reith Riley. I also consulted with Mr. Cernak briefly about our position with respect to the contract. I have no answer for you at this point in time as to where nothing has been determined. I would suggest that maybe Mr. Phillips could write a letter to the contractor, the subcontractor, so forth, and get us all into a room and try to work this out. We do not have a lot of time in order to do concrete work yet this year. So if that could be done, maybe we can make some progress.
You okay with that, Craig? Okay. All right, that'd be great because the winter's closing in on us here. So
Yes,
it was a little cooler when I got up this morning. So
Yes, it is.
I'm having a little bit of deja vu.
yeah, and he incurred some costs last year. So, any questions from the commissioners? All right. Well, thank you very much, John, and we'll proceed with the
And
letter. So,
You have anything else, John?
Well, I have a request for an amendment to our professional services contract based on the amount of time basically that we had anticipated putting into the project in the beginning. And I believe I gave everyone a copy of that. Last, I have copies here if you'd like a copy. But basically, I'm asking for an adjustment in cost based on the number of hours that we have actually been on site and worked on site as compared to the time frame that was allotted for the construction of the project. And so if you crunch the numbers, I'm requesting an additional administration fee, $39,000. $39,000.
$39,062.49.
Well, that's the extension of the math, but
that's an engineering number versus
Yeah.
the budget.
Okay, 39,000.
I'll throw in the
Oh, you're $62. There we go. So 39,000. Call it a day. Huh? So, Mr. Phillips, you have a recommendation on this?
I've reviewed this. I've met with Mr. Doyle on this, and he has had to negotiate some twists and turns in addition to what we expected originally with the project contract, and I think that this is in order and would recommend approval of the adjustment to the contract amount.
Any other questions? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Support.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. There is another aspect to this going forward. I believe that when I spoke to Mr. Phillips that we would continue to work on the project based on an hourly fee schedule that we presented along with our letter,
And
if that's acceptable.
so these would be hours that you would agree to, Craig, or manage, or how?
Yeah, as needed, as far as just finishing out the current scope, or if we ask Mr. Doyle to engage in, additional engineering or design-related services. We felt that at this point, given the unknowns of exactly what the timing and the elements of construction would be for the project, if necessary, to have plans reviewed at various stages or something like that as we go through the process of final negotiations with a developer to understand perhaps proposals, that sort of thing. We thought an hourly rate rather than a not to exceed amount made more sense on an as needed basis.
So does that require a contract addendum or anything to switch from fixed rate to an hourly rate or anything like that? Or same contract that's in there, so we're covered at this point?
And we'll just pay for services as rendered. Obviously, we can only pay for services rendered. So it would be with a consultation, between you and me to determine whether or not those expenses would be incurred.
Okay. It sounds like we've already got the contract, so I guess as you hear from Craig relative to new things that come up, or back and forth with Craig and I on additional hourly services as needed, because it doesn't sound like we need a contract addendum or anything other than to cover the $39,000. So
When does that hourly start?
We're pretty much at the end of our contract amount. With the additional $39,000 was needed to cover costs already incurred, and so we're kind of at that point.
Well, actually, it goes back to our last request for payment, which was July 10th, 2019. So what we've done since that point.
Okay, because it was an adjustment based on the $39,000 was to cover basically costs up to that point.
Correct.
Yeah.
okay, so we have any feel for the amount of services since July 10? A few thousand, is it?
I think it's probably in the range of $8,000, something like that.
How much? 8,000. You okay with that, Craig?
And that's been basically communication with the contractor and subcontractors, as well as some observation associated with the improvements that need to be made to correct the issue with the water main break at 5th and Pine, for example.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's been keeping me up to date on what those costs that have been incurred are.
So we will have it'll hit our budget on a monthly
As he bills,
item on the invoice
as he submits
list.
an invoice to us, yeah.
After it ran out, shouldn't we have been told that, the contract's up? We're now gonna incur more cost?
That's why we're here today.
Well, he's talking about July
after
now, so.
It already has.
Well, it's taken him, it's taken a little bit to have a conversation about where to go from here, and so.
So Craig, you're our leader, we're counting on you, so whatever, it sounds like you're very comfortable with this, so.
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
this is,
Well, so for example, next month when we have our list of items to pay for, there will be a line item in there, and there is this month from John Doyle and Associates, and so we'll be looking at that every month as that comes through to us on the front end of our agenda relative to authorizing payment for those services.
and we'll have an explanation of what those costs were
So
before we
Okay.
pay the invoice.
Matt, if you're looking for something in addition to that as a go-forward basis or not, because it sounds like, so it's 8,000, it's, it'll be July, August, September, right?
Part of
So
September.
almost, so 2.5 months for 8,000 is the going rate, and I would anticipate over the winter months that would drop way down, nothing, so it's just during the construction season, so.
And part of that was the unforeseen costs related to the oversight of the water main break, which none of us could have planned. So,
Well,
that's,
it's nice to have somebody knowledgeable on the site that knows where the pipes are at and has been following us all along when you get something, an emergency like that.
and that happened after
Right.
July.
Yeah, so that was part of it too. So we're gonna bill sanitary district.
You mean the water department?
No, water department, okay, there we go.
I'm not going there.
All right,
Okay.
I mean, unless somebody else has another question, I think we're good. Okay, well, good. Thank you, John.
All right, thank you.
So, Ruth, would you like to give us an update on where we're at relative to?
Ruth Warner with Neighborhood Capital Institute. We're the professional team reviewing the proposals that were submitted. So we're in the midst of the process right now. We've did a technical. Our professional team did a technical analysis of the proposals submitted. We submitted that analysis to staff, and we are now going to follow up with the submitted proposed responding teams and begin to ask a lot of questions and then figure out answer. We have questions that we want to have answered and then begin negotiations as appropriate with the team that seems strongest.
Okay, so this will be, in the near term, some individual communication with both proposals.
Yes.
And then a follow-up with one entity in even greater detail. Is that the way you see
That
this
is
going?
correct. What we'll do is as I said, we finished the analysis, lots of questions from both proposals. We will follow up with each team, and the basis of what we learned in those subsequent interviews, report to staff and the commission, and then make a recommendation on a preferred team to go into exclusive negotiations.
So the next update with a recommendation with a chosen firm, would that be prior to more in-depth negotiations, or that would be after the whole thing?
We will keep you advised at every step along the way. Right now, we assume that it's going to take us a few weeks to really drill down and understand each of the proposals and each of the teams. It's, this is serious business, and we don't want to rush it, and we want to understand what are the component parts of each of those proposals.
And it's really probably getting ready for the 2020 construction season, is that?
Oh, I think that's the goal. But the real goal is making sure that you have a strong development team that can give you the quality product that the city deserves and has the right financial capacity behind it. So that's our goal. We will keep working on that and keep you advised as those negotiations, as those information sessions go forward. We won't begin negotiating with a particular team without direction from you.
So any questions for Ruth on this issue? All right, so while I have you up here, since you're also involved with us on the station block, any potential update there or not to describe?
No, I think the thing is we're been talking with Craig that the work that we did in phases 1 and 2A, concluding last spring of 2018, sets us up with NICD and with the leadership here on sort of the general direction. So now that there's a deadline coming up for design, some engineering design requirements that need to be submitted to NICD in November, we're fast forwarding now on understanding what does NICD require that from the city that the city needs to do in a way that maximizes your flexibility going forward, because we've got to find that happy medium. We've got to solve the NICD issue because they've got filing deadlines, and then we've got to also protect your ability not to force a decision too early that isn't in your long-term best interest.
Well, we're also trying to navigate FTA requirements related to the project and potential in one way for certain, potentially in another. There's the potential for the city and NICD and FTA to also explore, from what I understand from conversations with NICD, the possibility of some additional federal dollars in the form of joint development. So that's going to become an element of the discussion as well. So there's some complexities involved with that and timing involved with that. So as we all know, the feds have their requirements in terms of what goes into proposals, what goes into reporting, what goes into if we pursue this joint development option, that gets even more complex. So.
And what's just what's great about how the city has taken this on so far is that the setup that you did a year ago is what has put you, by in all minds, has put you so far ahead of the curve of other cities. I mean, the RDA looks to you, and it's like, okay, well, what's Michigan City doing? Because you've been leading the way. So the fact that you've got a sort of a conceptually approved set of options that you can activate now is going to make this, actually a feasible outcome rather than something that would require you to start from scratch. So it's going to be intensive and it's going to be a lot of work, but you've done a lot of the hard work a year and a half ago.
So, and just to clarify, Craig or anyone else chime in here, in essence, in the NICD agreement, there, as part of the proposal to the feds, is to build a $10 million parking structure on 11th Street, near the old, adjacent to the old station, if you will.
Right.
That proximity of the station block, we call that. And what we're interested in doing is getting more bang for the buck out of that $10 million parking structure, which could involve some commercial or even some potential residential development near and including the parking garage.
The three options, and this is where Michigan City has put itself way at the leading edge. Without Michigan City taking this sort of proactive partnership role, you'd get a parking garage, 500 space parking garage, and that's it. It'd be this big hulk in the center of your downtown. What you've arranged through a lot of hard work is the potential to have a mixed-use development that will include some retail, as it plays out. The options all include some retail, some include residential, and some include a mix of residential and corporate institutional, and some include just institutional. But those three different options have advanced to a certain level that they've been approved by NICD, they've been approved by the RDA, and obviously by Michigan City. So protecting that flexibility going forward is a big part of the next few months.
Well, other questions for Ruth? All right. Thank you very much. So, number 6 item on the agenda, the South TIF paving project update, global engineering. I know we had some questions and ran a little short of time at our last meeting, and we had at least some level of confusion relative to the overheads related to the actual paving itself. So, Martin, I think we've had enough conversation back and forth that we understand what we're trying to understand. Because in essence, last month, I believe that we approved a $329,000 spend for
All of South TIF paving.
for all of South TIF paving, and there's actually 2 major projects
Right.
involved in that, correct?
So we just need to break down exactly how that $329,000 is broken up. And we just need to make it clear that when it comes to invoicing, that we need to make sure we
And put it in the appropriate bucket.
invoice
Right
those
bucket.
separately so that they're separate projects and there's not confusion about which ones are, going towards which projects. So just need a clarification on that and probably take just some sort of final action so it's clear what that breakup is, what that breakup of that amount is. So.
Good evening, Martin Bobchick, Global Engineering.
Thank you.
So we can start off with Village Road, if you'd care to, or the motion was made with Franklin Street last time, but Village Road's changes to date, if you include the construction amount, our consulting cost, which is design and construction inspection, the total project budget would come out to $656,649.11. Now, the original project budget was $550,000, which was made for just construction. So that means this overage is $106,649.11. So
That includes the $80,000 in design and engineering costs.
Exactly.
Right. So you take the $576,000, add 80 to that, and you come up with $656,649.11.
Correct.
And we have, like I said, we've already approved the bulk amount for the South TIF paving for both projects, but the Village Road, of that $329,000 and some change, $80,000 of that is for Village Road.
So let me just stop there just for a second. The commissioners with us on this?
That's
Split?
correct.
Well, no, 106,000. So it's that change amount.
No, but I'm saying of your design and
Of the engineering
design
yes,
contract.
yes,
I just don't want to make this confusing.
All right.
Yeah. Thank
We
you.
can't talk about
Right.
this in terms of overall change amounts. We need to talk about this
Okay.
in terms of construction and design.
I agree.
That's how we look at projects. So the $80,000 is
yes.
the design and the design and engineering costs related to Village Road.
Yep.
Of that 329,000 that we approved.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure was clear.
Got it. So that's Village Road.
And I wasn't here for the last meeting. Did we approve did we award the contract?
It's not been awarded.
It's all, okay, that was, I'm sorry, that was the other project. that we
Franklin
awarded.
Street has been
Sorry,
awarded.
I got the two confused.
Yeah. So, yes, we'd also need to award this and sign
So we have a
contracts at this
recommendation
time.
this evening.
Right.
And we'll need to make a slight adjustment to the allocated funds for the project to make up for a little bit of an overage.
Right.
In terms of bids. And
Correct.
you'll explain that. But I just want to make sure we're clear.
Yeah.
We previously approved 329 as a bulk amount for both projects. Of that, $80,000 is the design
Yeah,
portion.
so this is an 80
Of-
That's important.
No, there was a little bit of confusion about that.
Okay, so
yeah.
let's go to Franklin Street then.
Okay.
In terms of
We're
design,
doing-
let's just get that over with.
Okay, we
and
can
then
do the
we'll come back
design
to
now
the-
if that's fine.
Yeah,
Franklin Street, our design and inspection contract is a total of $249,015. Now, the amount over is, so if you took out the difference in the bid cost from what you budgeted, there's about $4,000 and change there difference. So, do you want that number separated out, or do you just want our design and inspection fees?
design and design.
Then that's just $249,015.
Right, and that's included in that overall $329,000 that we
Correct.
approved.
Correct.
Just so we're clear. So first off, I'd like to just take some action so that it's clear in the record of the minutes that the commission understands and
yeah.
approves the $2 amounts total for the, one at a time. We approve $80,000 for design and engineering costs related to Village Road, and separately $249,015 for Franklin Street.
So we need a motion really it's relative to the splits of the $329,000 we approved last month.
Just we'll do each one separately.
Okay.
That way it's clear.
Okay, so, all right, so let's take on Village Road first, I guess. So we have a request for $80,000 for engineering and inspection, is that it?
Correct.
Engineering inspection for Village Road. So it's,
That's
That's just design inspection.
Move for the design and inspection of Village Road.
No, 80,000. Right. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so let's go for design and inspection on Franklin Street in the amount of $249,015.
Yes.
So, give a motion, second that, please, if there's interest. So moved. Is there a
Support.
second? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So we have a splits now. Now, the awarding of the contract is.
That's separate, right. So I just want to get the design and inspection out of the way.
And those two total the 329.
Correct.
Okay. So
Okay.
Village Road, bids came in at $576,000, $576,649.11. That is over the original budget by $26,649.11. We received the award. It was complete. Reese Riley was the lowest bidder, and if the commission would like to move forward with signing a contract and award for that project, it's your decision to do so.
So I would just separately, we previously approved $550,000 for this project based on estimate. What I would recommend is that we approve an amount up to the additional $26,649.11 beyond bond proceeds to come from the South TIF up to, because we will need to find out what the exact amount of bond proceeds is left over after both projects are completed with the Village Road paving and the Southgate drainage improvements.
Because we had originally budgeted 550 from the South TIF.
No, from the bond proceeds for Ohio Street.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying we need a separate
Thank you.
approval.
I meant.
So $550,000 of this will be paid for out of bond proceeds.
Got it.
The additional up to $26,649.11 will be paid for out of South TIF funds.
Right, I think the way to make that motion would be to award the contract to Reeve Riley in the amount of the $576,649.11, of which $500,000 would come out of the bond proceeds, and
The
The remainder would
$26,000
the remainder would come out of South TIF.
South TIF, yes.
Does everybody understand that? Somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, motion to approve what Alan said.
Well, you said 550, not 500, so let's just stay with that.
Yeah.
So, is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you. And update for Franklin Street, we had a pre-con meeting on Tuesday. Construction's anticipated to start in early October, probably around the 10th or somewhere around there. But you'll see some signs going up with notification.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
That's key that the neighborhood gets notified, yeah.
And we will be distributing another letter prior to it as well with the schedule of what's going to happen.
Thank you.
Any further questions for them? All right. Item number 7 is public comments. Before I get into the public comments, I would like to make just a couple of suggestions here. Number 1, just to describe why we have redevelopment commissions. It's by state statutes. Redevelopment commissions are designed to eliminate blight and improve development in a community, and specifically not just new development, but also redevelopment, particularly of blighted sites and brownfield locations and other things that will enhance the economy of the local community. I know that there's a number of people want to make some comments this evening, and I would like to suggest some ground rules relative to the comments. And there would be, number 1, there would be no personal attacks. Number 2, it should be germane to the redevelopment commission. That each person has an opportunity to speak once and focus their comments and be concise, and that we limit the public meeting of each person that wants to speak to 3 minutes, and that's my suggestion. I would like to ask my fellow commissioners if they agree with that or not. Does anyone disagree? All right, then I'll open the meeting up for public comments. Is there somebody from the public that wishes to speak?
Hi, Tony Childers, 205 Douglas Ave, Michigan City, business owner. 30 years this month. Tony's Outboard, Chiefs Bait in Michigan City Wholesale. And, you know, I seen you guys, I don't know how much you spend here. What, million? Couple $1 million? Yeah. And, you know, the 7th Street, went down there to 7th Street, looked at it the other day, and we got a pad in there. Don, I believe you said it best that we had to put that huge pad in there for a fire truck. In case it caught on fire, we'd go in there and put the pads out, put the fire out. What are we going to put out? There ain't nothing there. You know, cart before the horse, my goodness. And then the signs are up there, hey, back-in parking. For what? You know, that's $1 million. And I'm not saying, you know, I could use some money over there to put people to work. You know, what about that? But that $1 million to Blue Chip. It's just funny. It's funny, strange. But I guess the most important thing is Ron, no personal attacks, but I'm here, you know. And you said one time you didn't really have anybody you was accountable to. Well, I can see all my friends showed up here tonight. But at any rate, you know, I'm doing this because of the citizens of Michigan City. I ain't personal attacking nobody. But there's really something going on in this city, yeah. And Ron, how about the fuel spill into Trail Creek? Is it public safety? Huh? Nobody got a damn word to say. Sorry. Yeah. Strobely. 50 years in business here. Can I get something on 12 East Business? Does anybody have anything on 12 East Business Center? I mean, the way it's currently being handled and the way it started 20 years ago in the basement here at City Hall. Nobody knows about 12 East Business Center. Secret business? Huh. I'm taking it good, Don. Taking it good. But Ron, again, what about the fuel spill from South Shore into Trail Creek? And you, of all people, got your job for a sympathy vote because he fired you. Remember? You guys couldn't get along. Woo! Now you're in the same board. You appointed him. You appointed him, you appointed him. Out of all you guys that vote, the deck is stacked like blue chip. It's stacked. 3 against 2. You two guys, I mean, the vote that you got is your opinion. No comments from nobody. I guess that's all I got. But again, what about the fuel spill into Trail Creek? Is that a cover-up because you don't want to mess with your double-track system? Oh my goodness. South Shore leaking fuel into Trail Creek? That is a natural resource. Where's Save the Dunes? Where's EPA? Oh, IDEM. Connection with IDEM. You guys are speechless. I'm amazed. 3 minutes. I waited 2 hours, well, an hour to get up here, so.
Appreciate your comments. So
But no other comments? Public safety. It is an issue. Where the hell is it an issue? It wasn't an issue at the Board of Public Works. It was a big issue at the city council meeting because Don Presbunski called up. I got the paperwork. It's no big deal. Our committal over there dumped some stuff into the creek, and oh boy, everybody's on board. Now, what about a class action lawsuit against South Shore and the detriment that it brought to the creek?
Excuse me, Mr. Childers.
Yeah, 3 minutes, I know.
Thank you.
But I don't have
Anybody
this
else from the
opportunity.
public which to speak?
Anybody speak? Chad? All right.
Thank you.
One other thing. I think he should be arrested for pollution.
That's enough.
That's
enough.
Well, you know what? I didn't come up here to ask your permission to talk. Okay.
It's our meeting, I'm sorry.
Well,
Other
that's my
members from the
opinion.
public,
That's
thank
my
you.
opinion.
Thank you.
Do any of you have any answers for any questions that he asked? Any comments from any of you? I take that as a no.
This is a public comment. We are listening to the public comments.
Okay.
All right. Okay, go to public comments, I guess now.
Is there anyone else from the public which wishes to speak? Anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? Hearing none, the public comment portion is closed. Are there any comments from commissioners? Any comments from commissioners? All right, then, hearing none. Excuse me.
Yes,
Commissioner.
Mr. President, I would just comment to, I don't believe that the diesel spill that occurred in Trail Creek had anything to do with the Redevelopment Commission. However, it was reported as soon as city officials, Mike Cuss in the Michigan City Sanitary District, was reported to the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. It was reported to the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, LaPorte County Hazmat. So all of those agencies were notified. IDEM had put out a press release. The press release was shared with the local media. So there was no cover-up. Sanitary district officials were on site. IDEM has been on site 20-some times since then. And so all of the proper agencies, as soon as the city knew anything about it, were notified. And there's a record to that. And I would refer these questions to Mike Cuss, the Sanitary District, IDEM officials, the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. They're the ones who handled this. So, I mean, and we did our part. And I'm really not sure what else the city could do.
I can tell you what else.
Excuse me.
There's no more
Mr.
public
Cuss.
comment, so
Mr.
you're
Cuss
tonight, sir.
Mr. Cuss
There is
knew
a
about
second.
that leak Ron, and you know we did.
I'm sorry, the
And you
public
turn
comment
it, you
portion
turn
is
it over
closed.
to
Are there any other
the news
commissioner
dispatch
comments?
for.
All right, so let's have them,
Voice of my choice.
Yeah, so that's for the record, all the proper agencies were notified in this situation, and like I said, I would refer any questions over to those agencies if there was no fish kill or anything like that, so.
all right, any
No
other commissioner
cover-up.
comments? All right, hearing no other commissioner comments, I just would like to restate that the Redevelopment Commission is here to move the community forward. I'm very proud of my fellow commissioners and their hard work that they put in to be true to the concept and their diligence in terms of trying to manage our tax dollars and the resources that we have in this great community to make it even better. So I want to thank my fellow commissioners for joining me in this. And if there aren't any other comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. It's moved and seconded. We're adjourned. Thank you.